Sherry Allen has worked in a synagogue for more than a decade, and she recently opened her own in Fort Worth.
We meet once a month at a church in the area.
Even though Allen is a chaplain, she does not support legislation that's advancing through the Texas Senate. It would allow school districts to bring in chaplains as either volunteers or paid employees to do the job of a counselor.
Chaplains are not trained in any way to, be able to counsel children in anything other than spiritual needs. There's no place for this in schools.
Allen believes the bill violates the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, which prohibits the government from supporting a specific religion. She's concerned lawmakers are promoting Christianity, but the bill's author disagrees.
Just one more tool in the toolbox for our public schools to be able to meet the needs of their students.
If a chaplain is paid, their salary would come from funding intended for school safety. Senator Mays Middleton of Galveston argues that having chaplains on campus can help students and teachers' mental health, thereby making schools safer.
What are the odds that a given campus is going to employ a Muslim chaplain as opposed to a Christian chaplain?
Senator Middleton says it'll be up to school districts to decide which chaplains they hire. He believes this bill stands on sturdy legal ground because last year, the Supreme Court backed a public school football coach who prayed on the field after games. Another bill that's advancing would allow a period for prayer and reading the Bible or other religious texts during the school day. A third would require the 10 Commandments to be displayed in every classroom.
This is supposed to be a country that is open to all faiths, all religions, and the ability to express them, but not in public schools. I mean, the law is, Constitution's pretty clear about that.
A disagreement about the separation of church and state in schools that's likely to go from the classroom to the courtroom. For Capital Tonight, I'm Charlotte Scott.
Joining us now to discuss this further is Michael Ahrens. He's a law professor at St. Mary's University School of Law in San Antonio and specializes in constitutional law and church and state. Professor, welcome to the program. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks very much.
What about the separation of church and state with these bills? Do they present a violation of that?
So one reason why the sponsors of the bills are so insistent on passing these is the phrase separation of church and state is often used as a substitute for the Establishment Clause prohibition. So the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. So the question for at least 100+ years has been, what exactly do we mean by that phrase, respecting an establishment of religion? And that's part of what's going on in these particular bills that are being proposed during the current legislative session.
Well, and speaking to that, I mean, lawmakers pushing them and pointing to what the Supreme Court did with the coach who prayed on the field, the ruling in that. So how does that compare? Can they compare?
So this is a case known as the Kennedy case, in which Coach Kennedy, after games, would quietly pray at the 50-yard line. And the question became, was his action the action of a private person or the action of an employee of a school? It's a kind of convoluted case, but just for your audience, I think I can summarize it in this way. The court decided that because his prayer was as a private citizen and not as a coach, that is, he was not on the clock in the sense of having to just do things related to his coaching activities, it was a violation of the Free Exercise Clause for the school district to forbid him from saying these prayers after the end of games on the 50-yard line.
So given that, and given the fact that lawmakers are pointing to that, what kind of legal challenges would you expect from the bills they're pushing this session?
Yeah, I think the sponsors of these bills are reading the Kennedy case very, very broadly. I don't think it says what they are asking. And I think that if any of the three bills that have been proposed that have something to do with what we broadly call religious liberty, they will be immediately challenged on constitutional grounds.
Yeah. Lastly, the bills related to chaplains and the reading of religious texts, the prayers in schools. Proponents argue that they're religiously neutral. What's your response to that?
Well, if you look at the reading the Bible or other religious texts, that's probably the most neutral of all, in part because it just says something that probably is already there, which is you can't coerce anyone to pray. You can't coerce people not to pray. And what this bill as proposed would do is it would simply add another part of the day where if you wanted to, in a room that was just set aside for reading religious texts, you could do so. With regard to the chaplain issue, that's a little bit iffier, in part because the bill, though short, fails to define exactly what they mean by chaplain. And so it's unclear to me exactly what they mean. Anyone can call oneself a chaplain. There's no definition that goes to that. And then finally, with regard to the 10 Commandments in the schools, that one seems the most problematic and the most likely immediately to be either struck down or to be enjoined from enforcement.
Something we will continue to watch closely. Professor Michael Ahrens, we'll get you back on. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. For more refreshing stories about your community, click the subscribe button over here. You can also download our Spectrum News app and tune in to Channel 55 on Dish and DirecTV to get live news coverage, weather updates every 10 minutes, and more. We'll see you then.